Welcome to the midterm review for fall 2019. So we're going to look at some questions. First, you want to be able to round. So you might want to remember the millions, billions, trillions place values. So here I'm rounding to 4,503,000,000. Everything after that will be zeros. Actually, I'm supposed to round to the 500 million, so that should be just 4,500,000,000. So the 3 shouldn't be there. For number 2, when we're doing exponential expressions, if we're multiplying, we're adding them. If we're dividing, we're subtracting them. And then if we have a negative exponent, we want to make sure we rewrite it as a positive exponent. So you're going to need to remember the exponent properties. And you're also going to want to remember the integer rules. So if I have two negatives, that actually turns into an addition when we have a minus and a negative next to each other. So when we're solving equations, we need to get the variable by itself. So I'll add 6 to both sides, divide by 5, and I get x equals 5. For C, when we have parentheses, we want to use distributive property. And then I need to get the variables on one side, the numbers on the other. So I'm going to subtract 34 from both sides. Then I make 5n equals 14n minus 36. So now I'm going to subtract 14n from both sides, so that I have the variables on the left, numbers on the right, and I get n equals 4. Again, subtract the numbers, and minus 5 on both sides. So y over 3 is going to equal negative 12. Multiply by 3 on both sides, and I get negative 36. So here we have Leon. He needs to sell at least 120 newspapers. He's already sold 85 subscriptions. So we're going to use the inequality to say at least. And we need to figure out how many subscriptions he needs to sell, so n. I'm going to subtract from both sides. N needs to be greater than or equal to 35. So remember, when we flip where the letter is, we flip the symbol. So if I'm writing this in interval notation, I'm going to use the bracket because we have the equal sign, and then infinity always gets the parenthesis. So on a number line, this would be a closed dot at 35, and then an arrow pointing to the right. Here I have this graph. So remember, y equals mx plus b, or you can use, plugging in numbers. So I'm going to use negative 3, 0, and 3. You always want to use 0, and then you want to use the positive and negative of the denominator for the other two values. You're going to plug those into the equation. So y equals negative 1/3 times negative 3 plus 2. So I get 1 plus 2, and that's 3. So I'm going to keep plugging in. So now I'm going to plug in 0, and I'm going to get y equals 2. And then for the last point, I'm going to plug in 3. 3's cross out. I'm left with negative 1 plus 2. So that gives me positive 1. Now I'm going to plot those 3 points. So negative 3, 3, 0, 2, and 3, positive 1. Connect those and form a line. Arrow in both directions. This is a linear equation. It forms a line. There's no exponents. So now we need to look at conversions. So I want to be familiar with grams to ounces and then kilograms. So 550 grams, Well, I know 1 pound is 453.6 grams. That'll cancel out the G. And then we convert those pounds to ounces. So 16 ounces is 1 pound. So use a calculator and round to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to get about 19.4 ounces. Okay, so here I have unemployments. I have absolute numbers. So I'm going to subtract the two numbers to get the absolute change. For percent change, I'm going to subtract them, divide by the old, multiply by 100. So here I have the new minus old for the absolute change. And then for percent change, I'm going to take that absolute value and divide it by the original value. And then multiply what I get by 100%. The last step is to write a sentence using those numbers comparing the two values of unemployment. Next question, we're looking at area of this L shape or irregular shape. I need to split it into two rectangles and then find the area of A. So I'm going to take 5.1 times 1.7. I get that 1.7 by subtracting the 9 and 7.3. For area B, that's going to be 11 feet times 7.3. And I'm going to add those two values to get the total area. Remember, you always have to have that squared if you're finding area. For GDP, that's going to be GDP divided by population for when we're looking per capita. So I'm going to write out those numbers with the zeros. That way, when I plug it into the calculator, I won't have to worry about what numbers to do. So this is where it'd be helpful to have that chart again, that place value chart. Then when we divide, we want to round to the nearest 100. So you're going to do that for all three countries. And then you're going to compare their GDP per capita by listing them from the greatest to least. So I can see that Australia was first, then Mexico, then Thailand. Population density, that's where we're taking the population divided by the area. So I'm looking at the population density of cows. I'm going to take that 2,351 and divide it by 7 square kilometers. After I find that, I need to convert it to miles because that's what the USDA uses. So I'm going to take that 336 cows per square mile and multiply it by 1.6 kilometers and then multiply it again by 1.6 because it's square. And then that'll give me my answer for B. So about 860.2 cows per square mile. Now I have to write a sentence for 3 saying yes or no, does it comply? In this case, it does. Number 11, we're looking at credit card interest. So we have the annual interest of 18.99, so we have to divide that by 12 to get the monthly. So we're going to take the original amount owed times 0.1899 because we have to move the decimal twice, and then divide that by 12 because we're only looking at the first month. When we're dealing with money, always round to the nearest cent. Next, when we're looking at a receipt for a restaurant, Marco and his friends are there. Here's their bill. So we're just going to add up all of those to get the subtotal. So 141.50. Then we're going to multiply by 0.075 to find the tax. And then the gratuity, we're actually going to multiply by 0.15. And we're just going to multiply the subtotal by 0.15. So add all three of those numbers, and that'll give me the total. Now, if you've been keeping up with the Excel, you'll be somewhat familiar with these. It says to calculate gross product, we need to subtract revenue and cost. So you're looking at B3 minus C3. Sum, right, that's total. So remember, you have the start number, colon the end number, or you can list them all out by adding them. So D3 plus D4 plus D5. And then average, equals average is the formula you want to use. And again, you're going to list the start value and the end value. Or you can actually add them all out, divide by how many there are. Lots of ways to do that. And the slash would be division for Excel. Two more questions. So number 14, we have arts, which is 18%, so 0.18 of the total students. And we're going to round because we want to get the total, a whole student. We don't want a decimal of a student. Similar for humanities, find the percent for humanities. So it's 31, so 0.31. And then multiply that by the total number of students at that university. And we get 4,456 when we round to the whole number. Now number 15 is going to be different than this. You're going to be given a set of numbers, and then you have to find the mean, median, and mode of those numbers. So let's say you're given 200, 900, 400, 350, and 500. So you would have to remember how to find mean, median, and mode of this set, and then decide which of those three central tendencies makes the most sense. So mean is where we add them all up and divide by how many there are. So that should actually be 470. And then median is where we list them smallest to greatest and pick the middle number. So 200, 350, 400, 500, 900. So 400 would be the middle number. And then mode, they all occur exactly once, so there is no mode. So you might say no mode or none.